Hi everyone. It's a real pleasure to welcome Elizabeth Sabet to Emerging Proud. Hi Elizabeth, and
Hello.
thank
Hi,
you for
Katie.
being with us.
Thank you for
really,
having me.
really lovely to finally meet each other as well. We've been in
Yeah.
contact for a while, so just to give people an introduction to you and what you do. I'm going to read your bio because I've just said it's quite extensive, so I want to make sure I do you justice. So you're a certified professional transformational spiritual coach, and you have your private practice. And you're also the founder and the CEO of the Institute of Transformational and Transpersonal Coaching. I love the transformational part. And the founder and founding executive director of Hope, a non-profit organisation dedicated to creating authentic community and dialogue about the inclusion of holistic practices and principles, and providing community activities, support and education for anyone who is ready to explore life beyond the boundaries of their enculturated life experiences, and for those with spiritual emergence experiences. So spiritual emergence is your expertise, and you've trained through Hope over 140 mental health professionals at a local level in Texas, Lubbock, Texas, on the ethics of being spiritually aware therapist and on spiritual emergence and emergency. You also serve as a board member for ASSIST, the American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences. And you've had many of your own spiritually transformative experiences since childhood. And so you're dedicated to supporting experiences and the mental health professionals that serve them. You also work to educate people of all ages and backgrounds about the principles of holism in the fields of integrated health, parenting, community relations, team building, and spiritual development. You work with experiences both nationally and internationally, and you also teach meditation at the Texas Tech University Health Science Center. Wow, that's an extensive biography there. I just wanted to mention something that I read on your Hope website, which I just love. You say that you have only two agendas at Hope Community. Those are to learn from each other and to learn to love each other more fully. I just love that ethos, and it just fits so well with the Emerging Proud campaign. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having me.
Just wonder if we can start by, usually I ask people what kind of led you into this work, and you mentioned that you had quite a few spiritually transformative experiences during childhood. I just wonder if you would mind talking about a few of those, maybe your most significant ones.
Sure. They started in childhood, but they've followed me throughout my whole life. I'm 52 now. My first one that I was 5 when these both occurred, and I didn't really understand them, what the totality of them, until I was in my early 40s. But I would lay in bed at night as a little 5-year-old girl, and I would still be awake trying to go to sleep, and I could hear boots marching. And at first I didn't understand even what that sound was, but it was the sound of boots. And then I would see, all of a sudden I was a young man with a gun lying in a ditch. Wow. Behind trees waiting to shoot somebody. And these black boots and red pants would go marching by. And of course, I was a rebel fighter for the American Revolution. Here we are. you in UK, and oh God, I hope it wasn't you I was shooting at.
Maybe, possibly. Well, it's a karmic relationship.
For the healing of time, God, really, here we are. That's funny. But and then the other experience at 5, they were both very terrifying. I was a worm. I thought I was a worm in a wormhole, and it was like sand flying by me very quickly, and like I was moving through sand very, very, very quickly. And I knew it was a wormhole. And I would tell my mom, I'm a worm in a wormhole.
Wow.
She said, oh, honey, you're not a worm in a wormhole. I said, yes, Mom, I'm a worm in a wormhole. And when I don't know if you've seen the movie Interstellar, but it's about,
yes.
when I saw, it's the exact thing. It's like somebody in Hollywood knows everything, I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what it looks like as you're going through a wormhole. And so those were the first two. At 9, I left my body spontaneously. And whoever was with me took me someplace, and they showed me these lights, street lights. Like I was on top of the street lights on a very foggy night. And I couldn't figure out where I was or what they were showing me. And then many years later, I drove by Texas Tech University late at night and on a foggy night, and there were those lights. It was exactly that. And I thought, well, I never went to college, actually. I never went to university. My life just did not afford me that particular opportunity. And by the time I was old enough to make that decision on my own, it seemed like time had passed for that. So I just had to learn. I have had many wonderful teachers, and I've learned whatever I've wanted to learn. I've gone out and learned it and became educated in whatever ways I could at the time.
Wow.
So I could never understand. Yeah, I could never understand why Texas Tech when I hadn't even gone to school there. And now I just do a meditation every other week for students, faculty, and staff at the Health Sciences Center. And I thought, well, maybe that's all that it was, But
like Interstellar, you were seeing into different time reality, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then when I was 13, I would come home from school and I was laying on the couch, and all of a sudden, fully awake, there were these like demonic hands that shot up through the couch, grabbed me and pulled me down. And I could see all of the batting of the couch, all the fabric and the springs and the wood. And I was going down and I was starting to go through the floor. And I just, I was raised Catholic. And so the only thing I could think of was to say the Lord's Prayer. So I said the Lord's Prayer, and back like a spring, I went back up into my body.
Wow.
And many years, actually not too long ago, a few years ago, this same entity came to me, and I thought, and it tried to pull me out of my body, and I thought, what's going on with me? Why is this back, and why have I allowed this back into my life again? Boundaries. I grew up in an abusive and dysfunctional home. Wow. And so boundaries as an adult have been a learning process for me. And I thought I had developed enough boundaries that something like that would not come into my presence anymore.
Right.
So I went to a shaman and said, I'm needing some help because I can't quite figure out what's going on here. And so with the shaman's help, we called this being back, and it wasn't a demon at all. His name was actually Jonathan, and he was a body jumper. And I called him a body jumper from the time that I was 13. And so as somebody that forgot he was from the light and just did not want to go into the light, and decided that all he had to do was take whatever form would scare a person enough literally scare them out of their body, and jump into their body, live their life until he was bored, and then go on. And so when I asked him in the shamanic session why he wanted my body, he said, well, you don't want your body. You don't even like your body. And weight has always been an issue for me since I was 13, actually, is when my body, my discomfort with my own body began at the age of 13.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It was a sexual attack from a cop, actually.
Oh, gosh.
And so,
wow.
So it made sense. And I was very open spiritually, which is not necessarily a good thing with me when you don't have boundaries. It's not good in the real world, in the 3D world, and it's not good in the spirit world.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you've just shared some really, really vital information already, Elizabeth. It's incredible. I really want to kind of go back to a few things that you've mentioned. And I really like the fact that you mentioned that this negative entity came to you. It was a reflection of something happening in you, because I think that's something that isn't always acknowledged in the spiritual world. And
Right.
I just wonder if you would talk a little bit more about that, maybe through your research. But before we kind of go on to that, I wonder if we could to kind of back up a bit. And I wondered if you were, I'm trying to recall things that you said that I kind of like to loop back to. But when you were talking about your experiences as a child, and you said you tried to talk to your mum, I'm just wondering if you had any kind of experiences around trying to share, and did you have any psychological kind of input, or did you ever kind of come into contact with services? Were people worried about you experiencing these things when you were younger?
No. I think when children talk about these things, that it's just brushed away as imagination, fantasy.
Yeah.
The only other time that I tried to tell her something was when a man walked into our kitchen, and he had I could tell you if a person was a good person or a bad person by their energy, because I felt their waves of energy, literally waves of energy on my body. So a good person had a nice coherent wave, and a bad person, somebody that could hurt me, had a very pokey, sharp, and it would poke on my skin, and I could feel it like knives, like pins.
Wow.
So I ran behind my mom and grabbed onto her leg, and she said, they called me Betsy back then, and she said, Betsy, what are you doing? And I said, that man has a bad buzz. And of course she was very embarrassed, because of course I said it in front of him, being a child. And she said, people don't buzz. And I said, yes, they do. And he has a bad one. And he ended up molesting both myself and my little sister, who was 3 at the time.
God.
So, I think at some point children just give up because they're just not listened to.
Yeah. And that's such a common thing, isn't it? That people kind of have to shut this very natural part of themselves off, and then develop mental health issues, or however it might manifest in later life. Gosh. So presumably this is the reason that you went to work in the field, and you mentioned that you were sexually abused, and the fact that kind of lowers your boundaries, and does make you more open and vulnerable to spiritual attachments or attack or whatever it might be. So what ways have you found to protect yourself from that over the years? Is there any particular practice that you do, or anyone that you've kind of found has helped you with tools to manage that?
Other than prayer and devotion, I think, and willingness to be educated. I need to grab some water, but, willingness to be educated on who is safe to love and who is not safe to love. And that's been a gradual process, whether you're in body or out of body.
Yeah.
I know that I'm a practitioner, a student and practitioner, teacher of A Course in Miracles. Found the work of Dr. David Hawkins, who also was very spiritually educational as to really what these phenomenon are, and how to be with them in passing and not make them important. A lot of times, because I was able to read, experience, feel, know people, people want to call that psychic, right? Being psychic is not the greatest thing in the world, and to allow people to glamorize that or make it special, create a specialized ego around it, is very harmful. So one of the first practices was to not let that be special, to not let it be anything important. It's just what is. And I always wanted to know why. How is it possible that these things happen? Because how is it possible I can know or see or feel something that's not there in the 3D, and I'm not, quote unquote, crazy? I mean, I'm highly functional. I married, raised 2 children, helped run 2 family businesses, worked as a administrative law dispute resolution officer for the state of Texas, very functional. And so how is it possible? Yeah. Well, so I realized that there's something, as you said, that gets knocked loose in the consciousness of a person when there's trauma. Helps you literally disassociate from the 3D.
Yeah.
Right. And
can I ask you that specific question, actually, because you've pinpointed something really important that people ask a lot, which is in relation to why is it that some people get completely lost in psychosis, in the altered state of consciousness when they have these kind of traumatic experiences, but some people like you don't. Have you discovered any kind of patterns or real definite answers to that within your years of researching this?
I do feel like it has something to do with a sense of responsibility and perhaps just practice and maturity. And I do believe that spiritual development follows very closely with child development, human development. And so what I mean by that is there are developmental stages in being able to handle the nonlinear realms and ordinary, non-ordinary states of consciousness.
Yeah.
And so it comes with determination, dedication, a strong sense of self. For some reason, and I don't know why, perhaps it was because I was the oldest child. And I had responsibility for the younger children. So maybe it had something to do with that, dedication, devotion, a strong sense of self.
And responsibility.
Responsibility, exactly. And so that responsibility trumped everything. And actually, so when I was probably 20, my first child was a little infant. I asked God to take all of these things away. Stop it. I don't want to know anything or hear anything else. Stop it, right? I want to be a mom. I want to be a good mom. I want my child to be raised in a healthy family and to know that she's loved and cared for. And so really, to me, as an adult, which parenthood started early for me at 20, that I wanted to be a good parent. And I think that's what it is. And when I've looked at the other people that I've worked with, they have a strong responsibility towards family members or others, whether it's family or community. There's a strong sense. I know that one person in particular who in the Hope community that really started having these intense unitive state of consciousness experiences that would pull her out and she would be in the bliss, right? But what has grounded her and helped her come back down, and of course she's very homesick and she misses those states, as we know that we all do.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's such a relief, first of all.
Yeah. It's another escapism, isn't it? It's another escapism, really.
It can become that, yes. And so, but, again, what has brought her back down into daily life is taking responsibility for family. So now I know that doesn't work for everyone. And we can't make blanket statements about and make judgments. Well, you don't feel if you would accept more responsibility, you'd be able to come down into this. No, it took this person, years. Yeah. But she'd never dealt with anything prior to this. And I've been dealing with this since childhood. So it's a landscape that you have to get used to, and you make a choice.
Yeah. And absolutely. And I suppose the depth of the crisis is maybe indicative of how long the integration period takes as well. And it can be years and years and years, I love the fact that you refer to the developmental stages as well, because I'm starting to learn a bit more about how that impacts on the actual state that somebody or experience somebody has when they do experience the awakening, and it's related to Ken Wilber's work and stages of development. I suppose you were referring to that. I also want to highlight something that you mentioned about not glamorizing this, because I think that's really, really important as well. And I'm really grateful that you've mentioned that, because I've been contacted by a few people who would like to be interviewed for this campaign, and saying I'm a TV medium or whatever it might be, and that's not what this campaign is about. It's about normalizing it. It's about the opposite. It's about saying anybody has this capacity. It's natural, it's human. It's not saying we're special because we've experienced this, because it can be really horrendous for some people.
That's right.
I'm really, really, grateful. I don't know whether you want to kind of add anything to that.
Yeah, I've actually been asked, and I've thought about, why have I not written about anything in detail? Just as, maybe I'm getting close to that point, at least maybe for academic purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But I have experienced 9 out of the 10 of the Groff spiritual emergencies, and had spontaneous mediumship. It started doing medium work at the age of 13. You just name it. God did put it aside. It did get put aside when I was 20, but at the age of 27, so I started meditating at 23, and a deep breathing practice at 23. Not because I read about it, it's just something that spontaneously started happening. In West Texas, there was no Buddhist temple at the time. We do have one. So I picked up a book on Buddhism, and I thought, maybe I could probably use that to help me calm down and be a better parent, etc.
Oh.
But little did I know that it would cause me to have a Kundalini awakening, an unsupported and unprepared Kundalini awakening at 32.
Oh.
And so, which led to a full-blown spiritual emergency. I put it off, and I pushed it down and suppressed it for as long as I could.
It was going to pop up at some time.
Yeah. But at 39, the lid blew off, and life changed forever. So in this process of, I could probably write a book, and if I wanted to be glamorized and I wanted to be in the public eye, I could, but it would be a disservice to what I think is happening on the planet right now. And that is for this to be about everyone and about the health of the planet.
But if you write a book and say that would be hugely valuable with your experiences.
Yeah, but the other thing is I don't, this is a big thing to do this, because I don't want to be seen.
Oh.
It's like, and Hope would have never have happened, because when we started Hope in Lubbock, I said, okay, well, I can send the emails, and I'll do the cleanup, and I'll do the emails, but don't put I don't want to be in front of anybody.
Wow.
But when you glamorize something and you make yourself special, then you add more layers of ego that's trying to get cleared out. Trying to detox this separateness and specialness, because it caused so much harm for humanity. And
and that's why spirituality has got a bad name, because of the kind of the airy fairy glittery kind of showbiz side of it.
And that's part of the process. It's part of the maturity, the maturation process of the ego. It goes through those teenage years, and I don't mean that in any disrespect. I've gone through them myself to some degree, but it's not healthy.
Yeah, it's the first stage, isn't it? It's like, because you do feel like you're the only person in the world to experience this, and everything's love and light and bliss and wonderful, and it's kind of a pretty hard fall when you realise that that's not the case. Yeah. Would you mind, Elizabeth, just kind of, one thing I'm really intrigued to know, because it's one thing that I'm really passionate about, is how you relay this to mental health professionals. So how you go about kind of bringing this in at a level that's received. And I know, people have said to me, Texas is not particularly open-minded. So I'm, really so impressed that you've managed to train 140 mental health clinicians in your area, and I just wondered what we can learn from you about how you go about doing that. I was actually asked this by somebody on a conference call yesterday, is how best to do that, and I'm not the person to speak to that, so I just wondered if you could share how you manage to kind of open people up.
Well, first it started as in my coaching practice here in Lubbock, Texas. And being a leader in the Hope community, some people knowing about my experiences, quietly one would say, oh, you need to go talk to her. Oh, you need to go, oh, that happened, you need to go talk to her. So in the local community, I've talked to over 200 experiencers here, talked to them just as a friend, as a spiritual friend, and worked with them as a coach, and in my coaching practice, people would come in and I'd realize these people need counseling. This is trauma related as well. And there's trauma here that has not been resolved. But like myself, I had one counselor that I'd spoke to during my first divorce that I finally revealed, because that was during my time of spiritual emergency. And I asked her if she knew about the Course in Miracles, and she said she knew about it and she'd read a little bit about it. And you just get a sense, as who you can talk to and who you can't.
Yeah.
So I just laid it on the line and told her everything. And she said, well, I can't really speak to that because it's not my area of expertise. But what I would say is that you're fine. Right? And you might need to talk to somebody else about that. That was the extent of it. But as a coach, I had no one to ethically refer people to for counseling, that they could bring their whole self, because that was Hope was started. Hope was started as a place where people could safely bring their whole self into a social environment.
Yeah.
And so now it became it was just a transfer of passion, right? So it was my passion to create safety, emotional safety for people, that extended to now the mental health field. I navigated the best I could as an adult. That's probably the codependency. Oh, I'm not going to do this for me. I'll do it for you, but I won't do it for me, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so one of our Hope community members had found the work of Stanislav Grof and Christina Grof, and she brought me the book, Stormy Search for Self, and she said, oh my God, Hope has to do something with this. She said, have you heard about spiritual emergency? I'm like 40-something years old. I've never heard. Poster child for spiritual emergency.
Yeah.
Never heard of it, right?
Wow.
And helping people navigate the spirit realm, helping people develop, the process to shut it out or to invite it in measured doses. And here I've never heard of anything. As you said, you think you're the only weird one.
Yeah.
So I looked for someone who had been trained by the Grofs in Texas that I could refer my clients to. And this lady had found Dr. Janice Holden at the University of North Texas, who's been trained. A phenomenal woman. Anybody who knows anything about near-death experiences or spiritual emergence and emergency probably knows about Dr. Janice Holden. Anyway, so I called her and I asked her if she would be willing to come to do a training for Hope to train mental health professionals, and she graciously agreed to do that. So I personally have not trained 140. I have taken part in some of the training, but Dr. Holden came and did our first academic symposium here, and that's through her. She referred me to Elaine Stout of Assist. And so it's when I started talking to people, and we got invited to train 125 therapists at Texas Tech Health Sciences Center, because I had been speaking to one of the heads of department there in the counseling department, marriage family therapy department. And I said, what it is when somebody thinks they're hearing from the Holy Spirit or from Jesus. And we're very Christian conservative culture here.
Right.
Right? Yeah. They understand that. They understand, oh, you're hearing from the Holy Spirit. Oh, you think you've heard from the Lord. They understand that. And so I've talked to people in this community that would, I think, normally have run me out on a rail as a witch. Mm-hmm. But, first of all, you have to have compassion for people that have not had a non-ordinary state of consciousness experience.
Yeah.
I mean, it's scary. It's scary for us. So, yes, they're afraid. And have compassion for that fear. Number one, have compassion for that fear. Have respect for that fear. And don't reveal more than they can apparently handle at any given moment. Right? I haven't gone to people and said, oh, I had a demon pull me out of my body once. I don't start with that. But when I explained what the isolation, the fear, and the inability that these people could not bring their whole self into a therapy appointment where they need to.
Yeah.
We need to bring our whole self into a session with somebody who's there to help us connect with our wholeness and live from that wholeness.
Yeah.
If we can't reveal ourselves to them, who can we? Well, who we end up doing it with? We end up doing it with people who we feel safe with that are not educated about anything.
Yeah.
For example, so I was having this very intense, different experience than I'd ever had before, and I was very worried about myself because this wasn't the normal weird. This was different, and I knew that there was something wrong. I would have these moments where I would lose time and have no memory. The worst and it happened within a few days of each other. And I had gone to the grocery store, but I woke up. It's like I woke up in the grocery line with my list, and I looked at my hands. I was like, I'm in a body.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my grocery list. Here's a pen. Here's a grocery cart full of groceries.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's crossed off the list, but I don't remember how I got here. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how did I get here? Do I have a car? Do I take public transportation? Mm-hmm. I think I have a car. Okay, what kind of car do I have? Not only can I not remember where I parked it, I don't remember what kind of car. Yes, I have a car, but what is it? And so I talked to a friend of mine, and he said, oh, don't worry, your brain's just being rewired. You're raising in consciousness and your neurology is changing. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, that was a comforting response. But actually, when I had the courage to talk to a trusted mental health advisor about it, that I explained, the majority of my experiences to, I said, how do I know that that's not dissociative disorder, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And a higher consciousness experience? Mm-hmm. How do I know? And she explained to me that was probably disassociation and that kind of thing. So I was under some kind of trauma response, right?
Right.
So when we have these communities, when we create these communities in our local areas, it's important to understand that we have both components. We have trained and compassionate mental health professionals, and we have the community members. We need both.
Yeah.
So when I explain that also to these mental health professionals that, look, I'm not asking you to support every airy fairy, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, because they're so important and they're so healing. those lighter, brighter experiences are so important, right? But
It's all
I'm
important.
not asking you to support everything that you experience as airy fairy and unimportant. I'm asking you, would you please participate and help people understand and help them navigate.
Keep people safe.
Keep people safe.
Yeah, you refer to the fact that there's so often trauma underlying these experiences as well. And so would you say that your kind of propensity to disassociate is linked to your childhood experience of disassociating due to your sexual trauma? Do you think?
Oh, I would definitely.
So you learned that, because that's very common, isn't it, for people who have been abused or physically abused in some ways.
Right. When you're being held down and you physically cannot get up and you physically have absolutely no control, the only way to survive is to go away. I know at one experience, I actually chose to not go away, and I said, well, he can take my body, but he can't take my soul.
Wow.
My soul is mine, and he can't have that, and I'm staying right here. And so, and interestingly enough, it stopped the event.
Wow.
There's a power, there is a power in working in the spirit realm.
Yeah.
Instead of fighting in the physical when there is no ability to fight. And unfortunately, I mean, it's just true sometimes. You're simply physically overpowered. But the power comes in the spirit realm, in your soul, in your spirit, because nobody can take that away from you.
Gosh, I mean, it's such a huge element that's missing, isn't it, when working with people with this? I so appreciate you sharing this so openly. Elizabeth, I think it's really important, and a lot of people will resonate with what you're saying, I'm sure. So would you mind just talking a little bit more about how you support people now, kind of the things that you've just you set up almost a year ago, the Institute for Transformational and Transpersonal Coaching, which is just incredible.
I think it's so important for coaches and mental health professionals to work together, and to, I know especially life coaching, it's a new profession, it's an unregulated profession. There are credentials from credentialing agencies that we can get, and I do have, because I wanted to be taken seriously, and credibility was really important to me, because I do not have a university degree, and that's never stopped me from doing anything that I've wanted to do. But at the same time, in order to accomplish what's important to me, I have to have those people who do have those degrees. The training at Texas Tech Health Sciences Center, my colleague Sarah Stone is a licensed professional counselor, and she did the ethics piece, and I did the piece of the education of what is a spiritual emergence and emergency. Right? And so standing up in front of a room of 125 therapists and talking about alien abduction and Kundalini experience and demonic possession, and
it's a tough call.
Well, you know what? You just have to say it. Again, when you're talking to, and I'll get back to the Institute in just a minute, but this just, when you're talking to mental health professionals, it's important, and it's time that we just talk about these things.
Yeah.
I know people who've had no childhood trauma. That I've talked to many people who've had no childhood trauma or sexual abuse trauma that have had the same experiences that I've had.
Yeah.
I know that the dissociative part was my opening to the unhealthy spirit realm, but I know other people who it's not, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to bring it up, and you just have to talk to them point blank. If you're in some kind of a professional environment, it's time to do that. to open the door, you have to be a little softer. But once you've got your foot in the door, you need to speak.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think it's been part of my integration process. What you've just talked about is the real humbling part of like having to be more compassionate, because I was in the real realms of needing to tell everyone, and this has to be spoken about, and that's a stage we all go through. And this whole process has been really humbling. And that's what you said is just, I think, really resonates with me, because I don't have any kind of professional standing, and I think it makes it easier for me to go and say this stuff because I haven't got as much to lose. I do respect the fact that some colleagues do have a doctorate that they might be risking or whatever it might be, so it's easier for me because I'm nobody. It's like no one cares if I've got nothing to lose, so that's probably why I'm doing this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think what you said is like you've studied for years and years, and yet you didn't have any professional qualification. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? You've probably got a double doctorate or something with all of the training that you've done.
Maybe, yeah. But
so you're going to go back to your institute.
Yeah, so you develop a sense of when you have a lived experience of something, you have an authority. It's an authority. A degree is an authority, a type of an authority, but so is lived experience. And I've finally come to respect my own lived experience as my own authority. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah. So the Institute, again, wanting to create, I realized I had a lot to say about coaching that perhaps wasn't being said, or at least I'm sure it is in my experience isn't that extensive with other organizations. But I realized that I had a lot to say about coaching, and that some of the premises in coaching still, while they were definitely it's more client-centered, there's still a lot of assumptions that I hear people speaking from in coaching. And I wanted to create a place, again, where professionals are creating safe spaces for the people that come to them.
Yeah.
So we have 2 tracks. One is on the transformational transpersonal model, and then that we started the pilot program in May of last year, and we will hopefully be finished with that by the end of the year. And then I'll file for accreditation for that particular program. And then later this year, I will be launching the pilot program for the Spiritual Emergence and Emergency Coaching Program, to train people how to coach somebody in spiritual emergence and spiritual emergency, and how to refer. But again, so how to refer is an important component in both the transformational transpersonal track and also the spiritual emergency track. We have to, as coaches, be willing to refer and not be afraid to refer people. And I've heard too many people that are trying to coach beyond their own level of skill and knowledge.
Yeah. And it's scary, it's worrying. It's like, I loved your example of, when somebody gave you with great intention, a very positive message that it's okay, your brain's rewiring itself, whereas actually that could have been quite risky. So I really love the fact that you kind of, emphasize the importance of both, and also bringing wholeness to the situation as well, not only creating the safe space so the client can come with their wholeness, but also the therapist has to be in a place where they do that too, so the two can meet.
Yeah. So this coaching institute is pretty rigorous because you're getting as a coach, you're getting deeply coached. So it's a very deep transformational coaching process that you're going to get coached as well. And so it's pretty confrontational and in some ways it's pretty standard coaching stuff. But in other ways, it's very deep coaching process, deep healing coach process.
Wow. And that's, it takes a lot, doesn't it, to be ready for that. How do you kind of see if, so I talked a little bit to Marie about this, about kind of how she accepts people onto her course, and kind of how to tell if somebody's kind of, at a stage of integration when they're ready. So is there any kind of criteria that you use to evaluate that? Because it's an ongoing process, isn't it? I suppose it's like we said, is it ever ending, the integration?
No, I don't think so. From one level to another, to another, to another. Yeah. There's always something falling apart. There's always some positive disintegration that's occurring. And when you're right at the next level, it amps up and you need a little bit more fuel, right? So how do I know? Well, they go away.
Okay.
They go away. They quit. They stop the process. But it's you in the coaching process, you offer a challenge, but I guess because I'm just so energetically attuned to what's happening, that just enough. First your challenge needs to be kind. So it's a challenge, but it's a kind challenge, and then you see what happens at that point. And so it's a little bit like acupressure. You push on it, and it's hurting, and you leave it there, and you see what happens. And if there's a softening within that person's demeanor, and you can watch it in their face, you can hear it in their voice.
Yeah.
When there's a softening into it, a relaxing or a surrendering into it, then you know that they're ready to go a little bit more. And you never, ever assume anything, because the person that's the most open and gung-ho, ready to go, is going to hit a wall at some point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a watchfulness to watch.
Wow.
If you're hitting hard, if there's a resistance, or if surrender, even the smallest little surrender.
That's a brilliant answer. I'm just wondering as well, do you bring your childhood energetic kind of abilities in? Do you watch their wavy energy or their pointy energy?
Yeah, it's not as subtle anymore as it was. And it's not as subtle, thank God, as it was. I should say it's more subtle now, and not as it was then, thank God. Yeah, and you have to tell Spirit to tune it down, dial it down just a little.
Yeah, I learned that recently. Like, please just leave me alone. Like, no, yeah. Wow, gosh.
Physical body can only handle so much,
Yeah, and this brain just can't handle it at all. So.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's so important, though, isn't it, to acknowledge that young children, are really very open to this stuff, and a lot of them are being diagnosed with different disorders at the moment. And so if there are mental health professionals out there that work with children, it's extremely important to know that the auditory system never stops working. And just because children are asleep, people have the most terrible conversations around children because they think the kids are sleeping, or they fight, but the kids are sleeping and they think they can't hear it. But literally, even in sleep, the auditory system works. The neurology is being patterned and programmed with whatever is happening, even while they're sleeping. And so, we don't know what children are picking up in their environment. We really don't. And the energy, like you said before, the energy from the parents and whoever they're around as well.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. God, I feel like I could talk to you for hours, Elizabeth, but I know you've got to go to work, so.
Eventually, yeah.
Thank you so much. You shared so much really, really important information. I actually feel like I want to do your coaching course, and I never really, it's never interested me to do one-to-one coaching, but I kind of really feel like you've been inspired, actually. I love the fact that you talk about, but bringing wholeness and being authentic, and that's the most important thing. And this kind of real balance of professional peer as well element, it's so important, isn't it? So where are you headed next with all of your projects? What are you kind of hoping to see? I've asked a few people the bigger picture question, and I feel like you can handle this, certainly. Like, what do you feel is happening in humanity at the moment, and what would you like to see things evolve in this realm?
Well, there's enough of us now that are open and willing to explore the more full aspects of what it means to be human. And personally, in my own belief system, I don't believe that there are two realms. I believe that there is only one realm, and that we lost access to the wholeness of the one realm. And what's happening is that more and more and more of us are being exposed to the one realm. And so we're here to help the planet, humanity, return to wholeness, and to respect life itself. And in respecting life, taking our proper place in it, and which means not taking too much from this planet and each other, and giving enough, but not too much as well. And so the organizations that you've created and the work that you're doing is part of normalizing. I read the work of, and gosh, forgive me, whoever wrote this, that the people like us are the canaries in the coal mine, right? That are the heralders of what's about to happen.
Yeah.
What's about to happen over the next 150 years or so is a more integrated experience of oneness. And that's why it's going to look really crazy, because we don't want it. We want to be special. And no, I'm not talking about communism. And because, there's that voice out there that says, oh, utopia, communism, whatever. No, that's not it. But just a gentler and more respectful integration of what it means to be human. So assist. I do see our work expanding into more training for peer support group facilitators. I'd like to see that happen. And before I came on board, they created an incredible peer group facilitator training manual. It's fabulous. And so if anybody wants to create a peer support group, contact me at info@assist.org. I'm really working on that as my own personal project with the board this year, and getting more of that started. Marie Gracebrook, has also, she's contributed to that document as well, and has been a major force in seeing that happen on the board of Assist. And also then creating more dialogue between informal dialogue on local levels for experiencers and for the mental health professionals that serve them. And so I would like to see that happen through Assist and through the school. What excites me the most is because it is an international school, and by the end of the year, one of my students gifted us with a $50,000 campus website.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to come up with the money to do this crazy project and, move into Southeast Asia and to China and to India and into Iran and Saudi. And half my family is Iranian. So I have a tremendous passion for bringing transformational healing, into these other cultures. And so so many brave women. Oh my gosh, these women are so
Mm-hmm.
brave
Mm-hmm.
and educated. Just so admire Middle Eastern women. And so how was I going to do that? Well, this gift, so I really see us within the next few years, hopefully by the end of next year, 2018, we'll be accredited through the International Coaching Federation and really be ready to launch out with, it doesn't matter whether you've had whatever type of spiritual emergence or emergency experience you've had or not had. If you've had this feeling within that something within you or your life is not right and you're trying so hard, but there's a cap on it, a transformational model is just so powerful. So I want to train as many people as I can before I die on how to be able to be present with people to create transformational experiences within their own lived experience.
Wow. Wow, what a beautiful, beautiful vision. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's so I'm sure so many people will want to contact you now with everything that you've just spoken about. Are you happy for me to share your contact details?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
And blog. Thank you so much for all of your sharing and being so open and whole, bringing your wholeness here. And like you said, you don't like to speak out, and you don't do that very often. So I'm so grateful for you being here and speaking out as part of this campaign. And I do really feel a resonance with your work, and what you've created with the Hope community is kind of what I'm trying to create with Emerging Proud as well, a safer society for people to speak out and to normalise this. So
That's right.
so appreciate everything you're doing, and it's people like you that are helping give me the confidence to do this. So it's wonderful to be connected, and hopefully we can collaborate some more, and we'd love to set up networks in the Middle East as well. So hopefully maybe we can do some more collaboration in the future.
That would be fabulous. And Katie, thank you for you, because there's so many people like us that, we're like, no cameras, don't publish. And it's time. It's time that we do it, but it's not something that I would have done. I couldn't have gone out and done what you've done. And what you're doing is vital. It is so vital to get this planet rolling in the higher frequencies.
Don't scare me more than I am right now. It's like I was sweating when you were talking about it before. It's ironic because I used to be the person that would hide under the table rather than speak in front of anyone. So it's kind of, I do say to Spirit, like, what on earth am I doing? It's like, why me? Because I'm petrified. So just the army of people that are coming out and speaking out is just brilliant, and it's really helping me. So I so appreciate you and everybody. None of us can do it alone. It's all about working together now, and
that's right,
changing things. So thank you so much for being with us, and
thank you, Katie.
Sharing. Lovely to be connected. Yes, and to you. Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
We'll stay in touch.
We will. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.